Hi, I'm Elliot. My sister hijacked my 18th birthday party, right in front of my parents, who just smiled and watched. But that was only the beginning. She stole my speech, my scholarship, even parts of my identity, and no one stopped her. Why would your own family let that happen? Or worse, help make it happen? What time are you hearing this? And where are you tuning in from? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to see how far this story travels. Power used to mean being seen, heard, counted. For years, I mistook silence for grace, endurance for strength. But birthdays used to be mine, until they weren't. It started the night I turned 18. We had planned dinner at Bella Rosa, a cozy Italian place with string lights and warm bread that made you feel like someone was waiting for you. I made the reservation myself, called twice to confirm. But when we showed up, the hostess frowned. "I'm sorry, we're fully booked. Private event." She didn't even look up from the clipboard. Before I could ask, I heard laughter from the patio. That laugh, sharp, practiced, could only belong to Carly. I turned, and there she was, standing in a white cocktail dress like she was the bride of the night. Tables draped in pink and gold, a giant cake that read, "Happy 17th, Carly," and a circle of smiling guests. Some of them I knew. Most I didn't. I stood there like a prop in the wrong play. Mom brushed past me, kissed Carly's cheek. "You know your sister's always wanted something big for her birthday," she said, not even looking at me. Dad just chuckled. "You two can share, can't you?" As if I'd forgotten which date was printed on my birth certificate. I didn't scream, didn't cry, just stood there, feeling my chest hollow out one breath at a time. The candles flickered. Carly winked across the table. 2 weeks later came graduation. I had poured myself into that speech, revised, rewritten, rehearsed. The day before, the principal said there'd been a change in order. "Family rep," he mumbled. I didn't get it, until I saw her walk up to the podium. Same blazer, same script, same opening line. "Good evening, future leaders." My words, down to the closing quote. She delivered it like a rehearsed monologue, smug, fluid. And when the last line hit, the auditorium rose with applause. The teachers beamed, my parents teared up. I couldn't move. It wasn't about the speech, it was about being erased. Later that night in the kitchen, I asked her why. She sipped Sprite and said, "You always act like things should be handed to you just because you try harder. That's not how it works." Dad chimed in, laughing from the other room. "You girls are both stars. Don't make it a competition." But it already was. I just hadn't known I was losing. I told myself maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe good things just looked better on her. I thought that would be the last time she'd take something from me. I was wrong. When I came home after graduation, I was still trying to make sense of what happened on that stage. I needed something real to hold on to. Anything that said, "You were here." My room was exactly as I'd left it, but colder somehow. The air didn't greet me. It just lingered, heavy and indifferent. I opened my old closet and pulled down the family yearbook. My fingers hesitated at the edges, as if the pages could cut. I flipped through quickly, scanning familiar names until I found the senior portraits. Mine was there, sort of. My photo was distorted, oddly pixelated like a bad scan. The ink smudged in a way no one else's was. I turned to the group shot from Honor Society. My face was gone, cleanly cut out, as if I'd never stood there at all. Mom walked by with a laundry basket. I showed her the page. "That's weird," she said, barely glancing. "Maybe the yearbook team messed up. You always take things so personally." I shut the book before I screamed. Later that evening, I tried logging into our shared digital album. The password didn't work. I texted Mom. No reply. When I asked her in person, she shrugged. "Maybe the system glitched. You know how tech is." But it wasn't tech. I reached out to Jessa, an old classmate who'd once backed up the graduation slideshow. She still had a copy. When she sent me the files, my chest turned to stone. Every photo I remembered being in, gone, replaced, cropped out. In one, Carly stood beside my old debate partner, wearing the same blazer I'd worn that night. Like she'd always been the one up there. The erasure wasn't passive. They weren't just forgetting me, they were rewriting me. I started questioning everything. Memories frayed at the edges. Had I imagined the long nights writing that speech, the honor chords, my role in the team project that won state? Maybe I had inflated it all in my head. No, I hadn't. I started a journal, handwritten, kept it under my mattress like a kid hiding candy. If I didn't write it down, I'd start to believe them. I needed proof, for myself. One night, I stared at a photo I knew once showed me and Cassidy in our caps, arms linked. Only Cassidy remained, smiling, ghost-like. And I thought, maybe I never left. Maybe I became the ghost haunting my own story. 16 years ago, the driveway sparkled that afternoon. Brand new SUV, glossy and oversized, sat like a monument in front of the house. Red bow still clinging to the hood, already curling at the edges under the Arizona sun. Carly bounced in place, phone out, filming her reaction in real time. "That's for me?" she squealed. Dad nodded proudly. "Happy sweet 16, baby girl. Thought it was time you had something of your own." I watched from the porch, my acceptance letter from ASU folded in my pocket like an afterthought. Later that week, when I asked about help with tuition, my father didn't even look up from his coffee. "You'll figure it out. That's what adults do." Mom chimed in. "Carly's still growing. You've got to manage your own path now." Manage. Like bills and rent and debt were character-building exercises. When I moved into the dorms, I saw Carly pull up in that SUV. Personalized plates. Daddy's fav. She waved as if nothing had happened. I didn't wave back. 2 weeks in, I got an email from financial aid. My FAFSA showed zero parental support. I sat in the admin office humiliated, while a counselor explained that unless I could provide new documentation, I'd lose access to need-based aid. "They marked you as independent," she said gently, "but you're not 24. You need their financial statements." I asked my parents that night. "We're just trying to be practical," Dad said. "It's not personal." "College is your journey," Mom added. "We wanted to let you grow." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. Then came the letter, loan denied. I thought it was a mistake. I had no debt, no missed payments. But my credit score told another story. Red, dangerous, toxic. I requested my full report. Charges for department store items, subscription services I didn't recognize, airfare booked months ago to Cabo. I didn't even own a credit card. Mom confessed it casually, like a favor gone misunderstood. "We used your name. It was easier for the store points. And some of it was for the family, not just Carly." Not just Carly. When I pressed her about legal consequences, she laughed. "You're being dramatic." I wasn't. I was ruined. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I started saving screenshots, making notes, printing statements. I made copies and hid them everywhere, on flash drives, in notebooks, even in my sock drawer back home. That was the moment I stopped being their daughter and started being their liability. The air that morning was thick with dew and silence. I sat by Cassidy's grave, a single sunflower in hand, fingers brushing the etching of her name as if it were skin. 6 years gone, but her absence still carved itself into me like fresh grief. I read the eulogy I wrote for her one more time, words I had never spoken aloud to anyone, just ink, paper, and a pain too raw to share. When I got home, the driveway was lined with balloons. Gold and pastel streamers hung from the porch rail. I thought maybe I'd walked into the wrong address, until I saw her, Carly, in a sequined jumpsuit, greeting guests with that breathless, fake enthusiasm she'd perfected. "Rebirth and radiance," she chirped. "We rise, we glow, we celebrate." A banner over the fireplace bore her face, stylized like a Vogue cover. I stood frozen in the entryway, mud still on my shoes from the cemetery. "Today?" I asked. "You're doing this today?" She didn't even flinch. "Cassidy wouldn't want you sulking. She was all about life." Mom appeared behind her, holding a tray of champagne flutes. "Honey, let people enjoy themselves. You dwell too much." I couldn't breathe. My skin itched. Cassidy's anniversary had always been mine to mourn in quiet, but Carly had turned it into her stage. Hours passed in a blur of noise and fake laughter. I tried to hide in the kitchen, but even that space had been invaded. Candles, perfume, a projection of Carly's baby photos on loop. Then came the toast. Everyone quieted, glasses raised. Carly stepped onto a makeshift podium, my dad's old recliner. She held a sheet of paper and smiled like she was about to deliver a TED Talk. I want to honor someone who always inspired me, someone who believed in truth, in light, in holding space for love. I recognized the words instantly. They weren't hers. They were mine. Lines lifted word for word from the eulogy I'd written for Cassidy. Private, sacred, hidden in my journal that I kept in the top drawer of my old room. She once wrote, "Grief doesn't shrink. We grow around it, like vines learning to bloom in shadow." There was applause. A distant uncle murmured, "She's always been the poetic one." I walked out. The door didn't slam, but it should have. The night air slapped my face, and I welcomed it. I drove straight back to the cemetery, sat in the dark beside Cassidy's grave. My throat felt sealed shut. "They didn't just take my name," I whispered. "They took you. They took how I remember you." My phone buzzed. Another party photo posted to the family group chat. Carly's smile, surrounded by guests, holding a cake with the words, "Here's to rising," piped in gold frosting. I pulled out my journal, flipped to the eulogy, took a photo, saved it in a folder marked Private Evidence. One day they'll answer for this. It started with a knock on my classroom door, too polite to be urgent, too soft to be casual. Officer Krell stood there, hands clasped like he was delivering bad news with good manners. "We need to talk," he said, his tone dry as paper. "Routine wellness check, you understand?" I didn't, but I nodded, because in schools resistance gets noted. He led me down the hallway. Students stared. A few teachers looked up from their screens and immediately looked away. Inside his office, the air was cool and stale. He offered me water I didn't touch. Then came the questions. "Do you ever feel overwhelmed?" "Yes," I said honestly. "Have you ever had thoughts of harming yourself or others?" I blinked. "What?" "No." He took notes anyway. Scribbled like I was already guilty. I asked why this was happening. He said, "We had a concern called in. Anonymous." And then he smiled, tight-lipped, rehearsed, like he already knew the story that was going to be written. By the time I returned to the staff room, the silence hit me harder than the questions. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a rumor, a cautionary tale. No one looked me in the eye. At lunch, my principal left a voicemail. "Just a suggestion, but maybe some personal time would help. Think it over." I sat alone that evening in my apartment, lights off, trying to trace when the floor beneath me began to crack. Then I saw it, an envelope in my school mailbox, no return address. Inside, photocopies of my HR file annotated. A new page added, one I hadn't seen before, an accusation. History of violent outbursts during adolescence. Juvenile record. Alleged suspension. False. Fabricated. Invented from air. And the date on the report, 1 week after the party, after I stormed out on Carly's stolen speech. My grief, my Cassidy. I called my mother. "Do you know anything about this?" I asked, voice trembling. She hesitated. "I think you're overreacting, sweetheart. High school was a long time ago. It never happened." "Well, people remember things differently." Click. I didn't call Carly. I didn't need to. That night, I sat in my car outside the school and wrote my first official rebuttal. I attached copies of the eulogy, the falsified HR doc, the photo of the birthday party cake. I sent it to the school board. Then I messaged Sasha, an old law school friend now working quietly in education law. "You free for a call? I need advice. Discreet." She called back 5 minutes later. As I recounted everything, my voice didn't shake. Not once. This wasn't a war I started, but I wasn't going to lose it quietly. The whispers came first. Quiet, sticky things that clung to the walls of the teacher's lounge and bled into email threads and lunch table glances. "She's been acting off lately." I heard there was an officer involved. Something about a breakdown? I walked through it like humidity, suffocating and invisible. No one said it to my face, but their silences were screaming. A week later, Principal Hayden called me in. The meeting was framed as a routine concern about my well-being. There were 3 people in the room. 2 took notes. "We've received word," Hayden said, "that your emotional state may be affecting the learning environment." My hand stayed still in my lap. "From who?" "We can't disclose the source, but the board has asked for a psychological evaluation before the next term." That was the language of career death in education. Polite, clinical, dangerous. I didn't flinch. Am I being placed on leave? He hesitated. Let's not escalate. Yet. I walked out and opened my inbox. 2 emails already about temporary substitutes for my classes. The vultures didn't wait. That night, Sasha sent me a screenshot. A Facebook video, edited. I was seen breaking up a fight between 2 students. Standard protocol. But in the video, the audio was warped. My voice had been slowed and erased to a shriek. One frame was frozen mid-gesture, making me look unhinged. The caption read, "Would you trust her with your child?" The comments were worse. She snapped. Should have been fired years ago. Another liberal nut job in a school system. It was shared over 3,000 times. Hayden called me the next morning. "I'm placing you on unpaid leave, just until this settles." I asked, "Have you reviewed the original footage?" He paused. "It's about perception now, Elliot." That word did it. Perception. Later that afternoon, I received a text from Carly. "Looks like you needed that break." I stared at it, didn't respond, just saved the message. Then I turned my phone off. 3 hours later, I sat in Sasha's office. She didn't ask questions, just pointed to a folder on her desk labeled Insurance. I opened it. Copies of emails, screenshots, photos, old journal pages. Records of every injustice that used to feel personal, now cataloged as evidence. "They want to see me lose control," I told her, "but that would be too easy." She gave a slow, tight nod. I added one more file to the folder, my resignation letter, unsigned. Let them think I was unraveling. Let them underestimate what came next. They wanted unhinged. They'd get unbreakable. It started with a file I wasn't looking for. I was cleaning out my old email inbox, searching for a forgotten password, when I saw the subject line, "Congratulations, full ride award class of 2007. It had never been opened. My hands froze. The sender was from Prescott University, a name I'd buried in the same grave as my self-worth. I clicked. The letter was warm, celebratory. My name was bolded in gold. They had offered me a full scholarship based on merit, leadership, and my essay titled "The Weight of Invisibility." I stared at it, unblinking. The date matched exactly with the week I'd received my first college rejection. The week my mother told me, "Not everyone's meant for the Ivy League, honey." The next email made me nauseous. A reply forged under my name dated 2 days later. "Thank you for the opportunity, but I must decline due to personal obligations." The signature wasn't mine. The phrasing wasn't mine. Sasha came over that night. She pulled the metadata and confirmed it. The IP address linked to the family home, not even a VPN. They hadn't bothered to hide it. Why would they? They knew I wouldn't look. I sat silent while Sasha paced. My body felt carved from ice, but my heart was boiling. I thought about how many nights I'd cried, wondering what I did wrong. How many times I convinced myself I just wasn't good enough. "I didn't fail," I whispered. "They chose for me." The next morning, we traced the scholarship funds. Turns out, they were used. The university's financial office confirmed tuition had been covered, for Carly. Not only that, but they flagged a note in the admission file. Essay reviewed for originality, similarities with prior submission flagged, but cleared. I requested a copy. Carly had copied my writing, verbatim in parts. My pain repackaged as her potential. Dr. Feldman, the admissions contact, confirmed something quietly. "We were concerned back then, but your name had already been withdrawn from our system. Honestly, we assumed you had ghostwritten hers." The air left my lungs. I remembered my mother telling me to be a good sister, to let Carly find her own shine. I was never supposed to win. I was the scaffolding for her spotlight. Back at home, I opened my journal, the one I started after the eulogy theft. I flipped to a blank page and wrote just one word across the top: reckoning. Then I opened a new Google Doc titled Testimony. Sasha began drafting legal notices. I dug up screenshots, old essays, scanned pages, receipts. "If they want a show," I said, "I'll give them one. But I'm the one holding the mic." I sent an encrypted version of the email thread to a journalist friend. No signature, just the subject line, "Buried Futures." And then I booked a meeting with the dean's office. The message came at 2:12 a.m. I almost deleted it, thinking it was another anonymous threat or helpful advice from a stranger online. But the subject line stopped me cold. "I know what they did to you. They did it to me too." Her name was Alyssa Peltzer. The memory came slowly, an honors student from my high school. Brilliant, soft-spoken. She vanished senior year, supposedly for plagiarism. But I remembered her GPA being higher than Carly's. We met at a local diner the next afternoon. She didn't waste time. "Your dad pressured the school board, said I had unstable tendencies." She slid a folder across the table. Emails, letters, even my final grades. I was ahead by 0.4. Carly wasn't valedictorian, she was next in line. Her voice cracked. "They destroyed me so she could shine." I sat still, barely breathing. Every word she said slotted into place like puzzle pieces I never knew I'd lost. And then she added, "I kept everything. I didn't think anyone would ever believe me, until I saw your story." That night, we sat in my living room side by side, cross-referencing timelines, names, actions. Her documentation stretched years. Mine filled the gaps. Sasha joined us on Zoom. "We're no longer filing a complaint," she said. "We're drafting a statement of systemic abuse." The document was surgical. Dates, screenshots, testimonies, even Carly's fake essays. We submitted it to the university board and blind copied 3 local reporters. By morning, the phone didn't stop buzzing. The first article hit the university news blog. "Family influence undermines academic integrity," inside the Gacy case. Then came the local paper, then national attention. Social media exploded. Mr. Gacy was suspended from the university's alumni board by noon. That afternoon, Carly was summoned for an emergency disciplinary hearing. Her academic file had been flagged for irregularities. I could imagine her face, poised, smug, cracking at the edges. I didn't text her back, but I read her message again. "You always had a flair for drama. Congrats, I guess." No response. Just screenshots. Saved. My own post went live that evening. I wrote about Alyssa, about myself, about what it felt like to live under the weight of someone else's spotlight. I didn't name names, but they knew. Comments flooded in. Support. Shock. Stories of others who had been silenced, overlooked, rewritten by louder voices with stronger connections. "This isn't just my story," I wrote in closing. "It's a blueprint for how silence is enforced and how we break it." That post went viral. By the end of the week, I was invited to speak on a local podcast, then a TV interview. People wanted receipts. I had them. All of them. The press gathered outside my apartment the next morning. I ignored them. Instead, I stood in front of my childhood home. Same siding, same porch swing. Except now, there were eyes, reporters, cameras, and a story they couldn't bury anymore. I raised my hand, knocked. Continuing the content of the previous chapter, and yet, walking through it didn't feel like a triumph. It felt like surrendering something that had never been mine to hold. The living room was quiet. Carly sat across from me, her eyes rimmed with a kind of redness that begged sympathy but offered no remorse. Mom hovered near the hallway, arms folded like she was cold. Dad wasn't there. He'd stepped down voluntarily before the board could oust him. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," Carly said, voice trembling. "You never mean anything," I replied flat. "It just happens, and somehow, it always happens to me." I left that afternoon with nothing but my satchel and a sealed folder. I never went back. Days later, news broke. Carly was fired from her media firm, pending ethical review. Her employer said the word integrity more times than I could count. Dad was removed from the university board, his statements scrubbed from the website. Mom stopped appearing at charity luncheons, her name quietly omitted from event programs. I didn't sue, didn't call reporters. Instead, I mailed every piece of evidence, burned CDs, screen grabs, handwritten notes, to the state education board under an anonymous return address. No revenge, just correction. 2 weeks later, I received a letter. Cream envelope, embossed seal. Inside, a certificate. Honorary academic recognition, granted retroactively for the scholarship I was denied at 18. I didn't cry, I didn't smile either. I just sat there, envelope resting against my fingertips, and let the silence stretch. For once, silence didn't mean erasure, it meant control. The story reached national coverage, but I declined every interview. Let them guess who I was. I was done performing. I ran past the old neighborhood last Sunday. The house looked smaller than I remembered. I didn't slow. A voicemail waited on my phone when I got home. Carly's voice, thinner now. I don't know what to say anymore, but I guess I hope you're okay. Delete. Forgiveness for me isn't reconciliation. It's choosing not to carry their weight any further. My peace came not from being seen, but from refusing to let them define the shape of my shadow. That night, I opened my journal, same one I'd filled since high school. I wrote, "Some wounds don't scar. They stay raw beneath clean skin. I used to think healing meant forgetting. Now, I think it means remembering everything and still breathing through it. The past didn't vanish, but it no longer dictated what came next." I closed the book, looked out the window. A soft breeze moved the curtain, just enough to lift the edge of tomorrow. Some stories don't end with applause. Some end with a quiet breath, a soft knowing that you've survived something that was meant to break you. Looking back, I don't carry hatred. I carry clarity. The kind of clarity you earn when you stop trying to prove your worth to people who benefit from your silence. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, questioned your reality, or wondered why your voice trembled while theirs roared, know this: you are not alone, and you are not powerless. I learned that boundaries aren't betrayal, that walking away is sometimes the most radical act of love you can give yourself. So here's my question to you. What have you stayed silent about? And what would happen if you finally spoke? If this story resonated with you, if it touched a part of your past or gave you courage for your future, let me know by dropping a 1 in the comments. Or tell me where you're tuning in from. I'd love to hear your voice. And hey, if this story didn't sit right with you, I'm open to hearing that too. What didn't land? What would you change? If you found meaning here, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story we share. Because sometimes hearing someone else's truth helps us find our own.